The global food crisis continues to intensify and things are going to get very bad in 2023. Two-thirds of fertilizer production in Europe has already been shut down. Monetary problems are causing huge headaches for poor nations in need of resources to import food. Global weather patterns continue to be completely crazy, and bird flu is killing millions upon millions of chickens and turkeys across the planet. Furthermore, the war in Ukraine will restrict the flow of agricultural exports and fertilizers from that part of the world for a long time, because the war has no end in sight. In essence, we are facing a perfect storm for global food production. Global hunger has been on the rise for years, and the UN World Food Programme is warning that we are heading towards another year of record hunger and quote, the world is at risk of another year of record famine as the global food crisis continues to drive even more people into ever greater levels of severe hunger, warns the United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, in a call for action. Urgent action to address the root causes of today's food crisis ahead of World Food Day on 16th of October. The global food crisis is a confluence of competing crises, caused by climate shocks, conflict and economic pressures, that has raised the number of hungry people worldwide from 282 million to 345 million in the first few months of 2022 alone. The United Nations World has expanded food assistance targets to reach a record 153 million people by 2022, and by mid-year it had already provided assistance to 111.2 million people. This is just the beginning. Eventually, there will be billions of people who won't have enough to eat regularly. In all my years, I've never seen hunger spread so quickly. In fact, there are a large number of people who are now facing starvation in the backyard of the United States. The United Nations is warning that hunger in one of Haiti's largest slums is at catastrophic levels as gang violence and economic crises push the country to a total breaking point in quote. Nearly 20,000 people in the impoverished Site Soleil area of the capital have dangerously little access to food and could face starvation, the UN says. Across Haiti, nearly 5 million are struggling with malnutrition. Haiti is facing a humanitarian catastrophe, said a senior UN official. But most people in the Western world won't care until they starve themselves. Unfortunately, that day may be much closer than many people ever imagined. At the moment, two-thirds of all fertilizer production capacity in Europe has already been shut down because of the skyrocketing price of natural gas. The fertilizer crisis in Europe is deepening with more than two-thirds of production capacity disrupted by rising gas costs, threatening farmers and consumers far beyond the region's borders. Russia's tightening of gas shipments following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine is hurting industries across Europe. But fertilizer companies are particularly hard hit because gas is an essential raw material and energy source for the industry. There simply won't be enough fertilizer for European farmers in 2023, and there won't be enough for everyone else who depends on Europe's fertilizer production. That's a big deal, because without fertilizers, we would only be able to feed about half the planet. Do you want to volunteer to be among those who don't get enough food? Meanwhile, the rising dollar is causing immense headaches for food importers around the world. In Ghana, importers are warning of shortages in the run-up to Christmas. Thousands of containers loaded with food have been piled up recently in Pakistan's ports, as private bakers in Egypt have raised bread prices after some flour mills ran out of wheat because it was held up at customs. Around the world, countries that rely on food imports are facing a destructive combination of high interest rates, an artificially high dollar and high commodity prices, eroding their power to pay for goods that are normally priced in dollars. The decrease in foreign currency reserves in many cases reduced access to dollars, and banks are slow to release payments. The value of the US dollar has skyrocketed because the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates. When the value of the dollar rises, poor countries have to pay much more for food in their own local currencies. So the Federal Reserve is actually making the global food crisis worse by raising its rates. But they'll keep doing it anyway. At the same time, global weather patterns continue to go wrong. This summer, we witnessed the worst drought in Chinese history. Europe suffered the worst drought in 500 years, and the western US continued to suffer from the worst multi-year megadrought in at least 1,200 years. It goes without saying that all this drought is absolutely devastating for agricultural production. According to the Washington Post, over 80% of the US is experiencing worrisome drought conditions right now. In the middle of the country, this caused a terrible crisis for barge traffic along the Mississippi River. The barge industry is quite important. It is crucial for moving aluminum, oil, fertilizer and coal, particularly in the Mississippi River and its tributaries. About 60% of grain and 54% of soybeans for U.S. export are moved by barge. Barges also transport more than a third of exported coal. Right now, the barge industry, and all of us who depend on its goods, is mired in a crisis. Water levels in the Mississippi River basin are at their lowest in more than a decade. Last week, about 2,000 barges were hit at one point and stopped. Unfortunately, very dry conditions are expected in the coming weeks and therefore things are not expected to improve anytime soon. Low water levels and dredging shut down barge traffic going north and south in Mississippi last week. At one point, over 100 tugs and 2,000 barges were stuck waiting. The blocked section of the river, between Louisiana and Mississippi, reopened on Monday. Traffic is limited to one direction, according to Petty Officer Jose Hernandez of the U.S. Coast Guard. That's certainly better than zero-hand traffic, but Mississippi is still expected to get even drier. Lisa Parker, a representative for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, told FreightWaves that drier conditions are expected in the coming weeks. The river is consuming water reserves now, Parker added, but those reserves will eventually run out. As a result of this crisis, barge movement rates for goods have skyrocketed and, ultimately, we could see massive amounts of agricultural produce rotting before reaching consumers. As many barges are stuck and cannot move, barge prices are hyperinflating. At the time of writing, the highest price in US dollars per ton shown is $90.44. Before the massive peak, it was less than $10 to move a ton of goods. The vast majority of bean bags and other agricultural products now stranded were destined for major export terminals in the Gulf of Mexico. While at least some of them appear to be covered and ventilated, how long do they actually last before spoiling? On another note, we continue to see crabs die at a staggering rate. In fact, it is now being reported that winter snow crab fishing in Alaska has been suspended because the crab population has experienced a catastrophic decline. Alaska authorities canceled several crab harvests in a conservation effort that sent shockwaves through the crab industry in the region. Authorities have canceled the Bristol Bay Autumn Red King crab harvest and, for the first time on record, are also delaying the winter snow crab harvest, according to several reports. The decision comes after the animal's recent population decline. Data from a NOAA survey of the East Bering Sea shows a 92% decline in the overall abundance of snow crabs from 2018 to 2021, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game confirmed to USA Today. An 83% decline occurred from 2018 to 2022, as some small crabs entered the population in 2022, according to the department's Division of Commercial Fisheries. And thanks to the global avian flu pandemic, birds continue to die in staggering numbers as well. If you can believe it, nearly 100 million chickens and turkeys have already been wiped out during this pandemic in the US and Europe alone, and experts warn that this pandemic will only intensify now that the cold weather is upon us. Those of you who have been to the supermarket lately already know that the prices of eggs, chicken and turkey have soared to absolutely crazy levels. At this point, prices are so high that a recent poll found that 1 in 4 Americans plan to skip Thanksgiving this year to save money. 1 in 5 Americans aren't sure they'll be able to cover the cost of Thanksgiving meals this year, and 1 in 4 plans to skip it to save money, according to a recent survey by Personal Capital. The economic situation in America of senile puppet President, Dementia Joe Biden is affecting Americans' vacation plans. According to the survey, a quarter of Americans plan to skip Thanksgiving this year to save money, and 1 in 5 doubted they would have enough money to cover Thanksgiving costs this year. More specifically, a third expect the 2022 Thanksgiving dinner to be smaller, and 45%, overall, said they are finally stressed out about Thanksgiving. Yes, things are already very bad. But according to senile puppet President, Dementia Joe Biden, it's all right. In fact, he says that our economy is strong as hell. The comment came during a conversation with a Baskin-Robbins reporter in Portland, Oregon, who asked the president if he had any concerns about the strength of the US dollar amid rising inflation. With a chocolate ice cream cone in hand, Biden replied, "I'm not worried about the strength of the dollar. I'm worried about the rest of the world. Our economy is strong as hell." WEF agenda in full force. Hundreds of schools in the Netherlands have started a campaign introducing children aged 10 to 12 to mealworms and insects as a sustainable meat substitute. The objective is to provoke changes in behavior through children without prejudice. Our leaders want us to believe that all the problems we are facing right now are only temporary and that a new golden age of peace and prosperity is upon us. But if that's true, why are they so eager to make us eat bugs? An enormous amount of time, energy and resources is being put behind a campaign to promote insects as one of the solutions to the growing global food crisis. But I don't intend to eat bugs, and I'm sure you don't either. Sadly, there will not be enough food for everyone on the planet in 2023, and millions upon millions of deeply suffering individuals will soon be desperately hungry. They can push to eat insects all they want, but that's not going to solve our problems. At the moment, they have absolutely no solution that will prevent large numbers of people from starving to death during the difficult years ahead of us. Please share this video with friends and family, and please like and subscribe. It would help me out a lot. Thank you and God bless.